story I'm remembering now. Okay, so this guy, I was like, "What are you talking about?" This guy, I think I'm paraphrasing. This guy who owned a fence company. I'm probably gonna get all this wrong, but I'm
What is
pretty
his
sure.
name?
I don't. It doesn't even matter. I don't want to even throw him under the bus.
Okay,
But
all right.
just imagine if you're listening to this. There's a guy in an orange jumpsuit taking his picture because he got caught doing this, which is very funny to me. And a lot of people thought this was funny, and it's not good. It's horrible. There is not. It's a very serious thing, but it was still. You'll see why. All right, so he is a small time fence contractor. He built fences for people, and he pretended to go into a well. He went into a competitor's office and pretended to need employment. And he, after they said no, we don't need you at all, and they didn't know who he was. He's like, "Hey, my cell phone's broken. Can I use your phone real quick?" So he picked up their cord. They're like, "Yeah, sure, you can use my phone." And he takes their cordless phone and hits a few buttons on it, and then just somehow nonchalantly just walked out. And weeks went by, and they figured out. This shows you how little people call the office number, how no employees call it, no one calls it. Weeks went by, and he had forwarded all of those phone calls to his office, to his cell phone. So he was getting all these leads for weeks and weeks and weeks. And yeah, he got, I think his bond is like $300,000. I forgot the actual
Wow.
judgment and verdict, but it was a funny thing. And a lot of people were really upset. Some people were like, I can't even believe that happened. He walked in, stole their leads for weeks. And I just made a comment of like the Ron Burgundy. I'm not even mad. I'm impressed. And a lot of people thought that was funny too. I still think it's very funny, but it's not
That's
good.
crazy.
I do not condone this, but it was
What was
truly
the
like,
charge? Was it like hacking, phone hacking
mm,
or something?
there's, I didn't really, that details, I know they matter, but I just saw his face in the jumpsuit and I read the brief synopsis of the story, but that's pretty much it. It was funny. It's very funny that
That's
he went into a competitor's office and forwarded all the phone calls to his office. That's just crazy.
that is wild. Yeah, that's impressive. But also terrible, but impressive. You're right. That is impressive.
Yep.
Like what creativity. I mean, wow. That's crazy.
I
Well,
can't imagine
anyway,
doing it, but he did it.
cool. Well, I was trying to think of a story to share. I don't really have anything great. I did see there was a meme I saw that I laughed at. It was so there was the whole Israel Palestine thing, and someone had tried to write free Palestine in their Twitter bio, but that they'd actually written free Palpatine, like from Star Wars.
It was
It was
actually very
dumb. It
funny.
was dumb, but it was funny. I laughed. I laughed.
Very
But
true.
all right. Well, let's jump into it. I have something specific that I want to talk about today. But I think we can talk about this in a lot of different contexts. But I want to talk about raising money, specifically around um, vendors for the roofing space. And so, there's a lot of chatter about this company raised this amount of money, that company raised this amount of money. And I think there's some myths, and I've had some conversations recently, and I think there's just some misunderstandings about what it means when a software vendor, specifically software, because I'm pro in software, so let's talk about software vendors, specifically when a software vendor raises capital from either VCs or private equity. And I think one of the myths is, oh, they just raised $20 million. That means they're going to be able to build the best product, right? That's one of the biggest myths. Now, I will say, they raised $20 million. They potentially could build the best product. They might have the most resources to build the best product. But here's the catch. They're not going to. And the reason that they're not going to is because when you raise lots of capital from either VCs or private equity, the incentive structure of the business completely changes because it changes from, oh, we're trying to build the best products that serve our customers to we have to get a return for those investors. We just pulled in $20 million. We got to give them back hundreds of millions of dollars. That's why the investors are investing that money. And how do you get that money back out of the business? It's not by building product. It's through marketing. So the only thing, not the only thing, but most of that money, when a company is like, oh, we raised $20 million, 90% of that money is going towards marketing. I don't want to put exact numbers. It's maybe not 90%, but a vast majority of that money is going towards marketing. So when you hear, oh, a company just raised $20 million, it doesn't mean that they're a bad company, right? I'm not saying they're bad. I'm not saying that they couldn't build a great product, but what you're going to get with that company is a company that is strongly incentivized to grow as quickly as possible. And so when you go and you talk to them, you are just a number. You're not important to them because they need you, but they also need hundreds or thousands of other roofers at the same time. And so what you get is you get companies that are putting out marketing that is very pretty, that looks very fancy and says things like, oh, the all-in-one tool for roofing contractors, all in one place. But then when you actually do the demo or you sign up with them, you realize, oh yeah, it's all in one except for calendar functionality, text messaging, like all of these different features that are critical for running your business, like
or it doesn't even work. It doesn't even work.
Or it barely even works to begin with. Yeah, because they're the way the investors, they're putting $20 million in, but they're telling the founders, hey, spend as little money as possible on the product. Get the product just barely to the point where it's workable and it's sellable, and then like put the rest of that money into marketing. That is the standing orders of every VC or a private equity investor, because that is how these companies are structured. So that's the biggest myth there. And then the other thing too is like people are like, oh, they just raised $20 million. They're going to be around. Like they raised $20 million. They're not going to go out of business. Can't go out of business. That is the exact opposite. Bootstrapped companies are typically much more stable companies because they're based around actually making enough money to cover their expenses and at least breaking even, if not being profitable. Whereas a VC or a private equity backed startup, they are constantly running in a deficit because they have all these people they've hired, all this massive staff and expense that they have to pay for. And so if they don't reach their milestones that the investors have laid out in order to raise that next round of funding, they're out of business, or they're going to have to completely strip everything and break all their promises to customers. So it's an extremely dangerous, actually much less stable business when they raise all that money than it is if they stay bootstrapped. So that's a big myth, is like that it's a more stable business. And then I think the third myth is that you're going to get better customer support from this well-funded company than you're going to get from a bootstrap company. And that's maybe not less of a myth, but people don't quite understand. I think the biggest thing that I've seen is these funded companies will say things like free onboarding. You just come to us, we're going to set you up and everything's free. It's not actually free. What's happening is the VCs and the private equity people are covering that cost in the short run to get your business. But the person that does that onboarding is someone that probably watched a PowerPoint presentation, has no idea how your business is run. They have no idea how that software works. They probably watched a PowerPoint presentation last week because they're going to hire all these people super fast to do all this free onboarding work. So yeah, maybe it's free, right? Whereas the bootstrap company like Proline does have to charge for our time, all the time and effort, work that puts into onboarding you. But with the funded VC funded startup, you're a number, and they're just putting you through that system as quickly as possible because they got to hit those milestones to raise that next round of funding, right? And I don't want to say that they can't be a great company. I'm not talking about anyone specific. It's just that there are companies out there that have raised funding. I'm not saying that they can't be great companies, because they can. It's just that the incentive structure when you raise that kind of funding is so warped, especially when it's early on. Now, if the product was great, if a software company has the perfect product and they just want to raise money for marketing, it's not that big a deal. It's not going to change that much.